I was leading a small team. We were just three people, me and two girls, but I was so bad at that role. I was so incompetent as a leader that I actually got fired from that. To see just a few years later the giant quantum leaps that I had to take in order to lead hundreds, and then by the time I left, it was around 1,000 people at the company. So it was really hard because I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. But I think that really catapulted me into the relationships that I have now and being able to lead people.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Nourished Inside Out. Today I'm here with Anna Shilina. She is the author of Habit Freedom and founder of RelatingAcademy.com. Anna is the go to for habits and relationship coaching for high performers and trailblazers. Thank you so much for joining us today, Anna. It's a pleasure to have you. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into this career for yourself?
I'd love to, yes. So I've always been interested about humans. I found them fascinating. I remember when I was young, I don't know what you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were growing up, but I remember telling my dad that when I grow up, I wanted to either be an interior designer or a psychologist. And so by becoming a human behavior specialist and a habits coach and relationship coach is not too far off, but it went in a very roundabout way. So I started going to personal development seminars when I was very young and really diving into, I had mentors over the years. Dr. John DiMartini was one of them. I studied under him for about 8 years, and he is a world-renowned human behavior specialist. But it wasn't my core focus until later on in life. So at the beginning, I was in hospitality for 8 years, and then I had an export business, exporting wine from South Africa to Ghana and Zimbabwe. And then I had a security business with security guarding contracts. I did many different things until I exited that security business and I started to consult and coach using all the skills that I had developed over the years about human behavior and personal development. And so it wasn't like a straight line of this is exactly what I want to do and like we get there immediately. It was very much the scenic route. You find your career or does your career find you? I always find that an interesting conversation. I was doing mindset coaching and performance coaching for about 5 years. And then I started doing more relating and relationship coaching after studying that, because while I love helping businesses grow and scale, and I still have clients who do that these days, I found that the thing that lit me up even more was relationships and helping people relate better. And at the end of the day, it's also helping myself as much as possible, because relationships are a never ending story. It's a gift that keeps on giving. So there's no end to it where it's like, okay, I know everything I need to know about relationships, I'm done, I can graduate from the school. That doesn't happen. It's constantly surprising me, and there's always something to learn, which is one of the things that I really love about it.
You were able to find your path to where you are now with relationship coaching, and I think that's really cool. How did the security business and the wine business that you had help shape you to where you are now, and how did that help you build your relationship coaching business?
That's such a good question, because I do really feel that they're so random, but they are really interconnected. So, in the security business, I had to become a leader very, very fast. I didn't have much leadership training or know how to lead people. I was in my mid 20s, but all of a sudden, I was reading the books and talking to people and finding mentors and really like figuring out how to lead people. And that was a huge journey, right? I even got fired from my very first leadership role. As I said, I was in hospitality for about 8 years, and a few of those years, 2 or 3 of those years, included working on the yachts. And one of those roles, I became a chief stewardess in a very short period of time. Within 18 months in the industry, I was leading a small team. We were just three people, me and two girls, but I was so bad at that role. I was so incompetent as a leader that I actually got fired from that. To see just a few years later the giant quantum leaps that I had to take in order to lead hundreds, and then by the time I left, it was around 1,000 people at the company. So it was really hard because I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. But I think that really catapulted me into the relationships that I have now and being able to lead people now. At the end of the day, all that relationships are these negotiations between, like, sometimes I'm leading and sometimes you're leading, sometimes I'm following and sometimes you're following, and so it's this oscillation. And so being able to lead from a place of compassion and is a huge skill set that I carry into this day. And then with wine exporting, I feel like the biggest thing that I carried through from that was just like hustle. Meaning that when we started that business, we didn't know the first thing about export. We just knew that we liked to drink wine back then. I don't drink alcohol anymore, but back then it was a really fun thing to do. Just talking to people, finding out what their needs are, who are the exporters, who are the importers, having conversations. And if you knock on enough doors, some of them will start to open, right? Even if you don't have the experience and you don't know what you're doing at the beginning, it can very much be, and often is, that numbers game. And so really carrying that into any business that I
Wow, that's
get going has helped me a lot.
a lot of times when we get faced with a setback, it's so easy for us to think that maybe this isn't what is meant for me. Because you mentioned that you got fired from your first leadership job, and you could have had every reason to say, this isn't for me. Maybe I should go do something else. But instead, you decided to just put your head down and to learn and to grow through it and see how you can be a better leader. What are some challenges that you faced while you were growing as a leader?
Lots of tears. I am a very sensitive person. Some people would have the opinion and have told me that their opinion is, I'm too sensitive. I would be so much more successful if I was less sensitive. Maybe, maybe not. It depends on your definition of success. My sensitivity is also a gift, and it can also be not so productive. I can see that side of the argument as well. But there were definitely were a lot of tears on my end. And also, Aneta, like, I used to make people cry. Like, when I say I would cry, I would also from time to time step into that tyrant role. Well, as I was learning, where's that middle ground of leading with like compassion and heart? I didn't always have that. When I started, my assistant would legitimately cry at least once a week. And interestingly enough, a few years later, once I had left that security business, and a few years later, that same assistant was looking for another opportunity. And I happened to have an opportunity in my new business. And I spoke with her and I'm like, but I used to make you cry. Like, why would you want to work with me again? Like, that's wild. And she said, yes, it was hard, but you taught me a lot, and I developed and I got better. And I really learned that, sometimes tears, pain, all those things, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we do need to toughen up. Sometimes we do need to be more productive. And sometimes we need to shed a few tears. There's nothing wrong with that.
A lot of times, being sensitive shows as a weakness. Like, that person is weak because they're showing their emotions. That person is not strong enough because they are able to cry. But it's actually such a gift, exactly like you said. It's a gift to be able to let those emotions out and not bottle them in. Because we know what happens if we bottle our emotions, and we bottle and bottle and bottle, and then eventually they're going to blow up in your face. And maybe not yours, maybe somebody else's, and it won't be pleasant. So it's such a
Mm.
beautiful thing that you notice that your sensitivity is a gift. And I really love that. What are some things that you typically see in your clients that you work with when it comes to leadership or relationships?
So, just to be clear, I want to honor that yes, the sensitivity is a gift, and also it can be an impediment. And it's having that discernment and also not being too attached with, oh, it's such a gift that it's all good, to realize when to use it as a gift and when to check it. Like, that's where maturity really happens. Because if I'm in my ego and I'm just saying, oh, it's such a gift, like tough shit, like what anyone else experiences, or how productive or not productive it makes me, that is not the most empowered state, I feel. It's far more empowering to know when to use it as a gift and when to notice, oh, okay, in this situation, it's actually not serving me. How do I close it up for now, and not in the sense that I'm not going to use it again. I'm going to use it in a right environment, but really being aware when to use it and when to not. So just to wrap that thought up. And then what are some of the things that I see in my clients? A lot of them, by the time they've come to me, they've already done a lot of work. They've already like figured out, yes, they're mostly all entrepreneurs, and so they have that initiative. They have that initiative. They know they want to make a change. For example, one of the clients I'm working with is it's all about setting boundaries and letting go of guilt and improving her relationships that way. And yes, then the habits also form part of the coaching, because then that influences the habits and how she soothes and copes with food and other things, other like things like scrolling or doom scrolling, things like that. Um, but by the time we started speaking, she'd already been thinking of coaching for a while and considering it, but hasn't quite found kind of the right fit or the person that really understands where she is and is able to take her where she wants to go. A lot of the people that I work with, they've read a lot of books, listened to a lot of podcasts, but something just doesn't seem to be clicking. What's the missing piece? Like, what am I missing? I seem to be doing all the things, but there's something that I'm missing. And the work that we do is very deep inner child work, understanding where the patterns were born, and going to the root cause, really reparenting that inner child. And it's really beautiful, because the same client that I just mentioned, she comes to me 1 week into coaching, and she goes, Anna, I don't know, I can't, like, could it be that it's working so fast? And I was like, what do you mean, what happened? And she says, I've always had quite a strained relationship with my mom. Like, everything she'd say would trigger me a lot. And all of a sudden, after one coaching session, I'm able to listen to her without being triggered and have more compassion with her. Like, could it be working this fast? And it definitely can, because we're not working on the symptoms level, we're working on the root cause, and you're starting to feel safe with yourself. And so you're starting to let go of some of that relationship and the triggers that you had with your mom. So to see her in a different light. And so that's really beautiful, how quickly it can work when you work on the deep, deep things.
Healing that inner child. It's so important. I think we hold on to a lot more trauma from our childhood than we ever realize. Would you say that a lot of limiting beliefs are still holding people back because of childhood trauma?
A lot of the beliefs that we hold, unless we actively work on rewiring them as adults, and those who've done the seminars and the courses and all the personal development, like they have rewired a lot. But unless you've done that work, a lot of the beliefs that we carry through our adulthood does come from childhood. And I mean, it's like a lot of the programming happens from age 0 to 7, like the fundamental elements, our operating system gets really like programmed and embedded at a young age. And I often also, when I coach parents, I remind them that the way you speak to your
Mm.
children becomes their inner voice. And the way your parents spoke to you became your inner voice, until you get to reprogram it. And that's a whole journey on its own. But a lot of people, first of all, don't even know that. They're like, where is this critical voice coming from? They don't even ask that question, right? So the first question is this voice in my head that's not so friendly, that I would never speak to another person like this, but I let that voice speak to myself like this. And like, if that comes from my upbringing, okay, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, because all of our parents did the best that they could at the time. I really do believe that. But now that I have that awareness, how do I start to reparent that?
How can someone create a more fulfilling relationship within themselves, and why is it so important?
The relationship we have with ourselves is the first, the longest, and the last relationship we'll ever have. All the other relationships come and go, even the long ones, they still come and go. And what is a relationship with yourself? It's primarily self-trust, that you can trust yourself, self-respect, and self-love. And it's an element of that is becoming your own best friend, and more specifically it's becoming your future self's best friend. So it's prioritizing the needs of your future self over your present self's impulses. And when we do this, and we really learn to love ourselves on that deep level, love, respect ourselves, trust ourselves, means we keep promises out to ourselves. This is where habits come in, right? Because if we're trying to change a habit and we're trying to make promises to ourselves, but we're not keeping them, there's no ways you're respecting yourself. Like that's the one of the things that I help people see is the disrespect that you're experiencing comes from you first and foremost, because you're not respecting yourself. So let's start there. And then as soon as that relationship starts to get healed, then all our other relationships on the outside start to improve as well, because they start to mirror the work that we've done within.
The longest relationship that we'll have is the one with ourselves. A lot of times we don't think about that when we're thinking about relationships. And that's so true. You know, we spend the most times with ourselves. We might as well love ourselves and create a fulfilling relationship. It doesn't matter how long your longest relationship was, you still are always going to be with yourself. And I think that's really beautiful. For somebody who has ingrained limiting beliefs, how can they start to release those limiting beliefs about themselves and the relationship that they have with themselves?
The first step is just write it out. If you suspect that you have limiting beliefs, let me write it out. I'm not good enough, for example, as a limiting belief, right? What else? Like I'll never make it, or whatever those are, and just really get it out of of the head, like almost shake out the contents of your head. And so write down what are all the limiting things that I've ever been told as a child. So that's another journal prompt that you can do. Money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work really hard to earn it. Like, what are all the things that you were told as a child that may or may not be limiting you? And then you can go through them. And one of the best tools to transform any limiting beliefs comes from Byron Katie's work. Are you familiar with her questions?
No.
So Byron Katie, anyone can Google it, and there's a lot of videos on YouTube how to use these questions as well. But I'll just run through them very quickly. So, for example, the belief I am not good enough. The first question is that true? So if you really sit with that question, it's like, is that true? And you're like, you could say, yes, it's absolutely true because I feel like I'm not good enough, right? You could say, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Or you can say, actually, a lot of the time it's not true. It's just, a story that I tell myself. The next question on the worksheet is, how do I know that this is absolutely true? Or can I know that this is absolutely true? It's like, can I really know absolutely that I'm not good enough? Again, there's going to be a spectrum of answers for different people, right? But then this is where the questions really get good. This is next to it. My two favorite top questions to turn around any limiting belief, which is, how do I react? How do I behave when I believe this belief? Well, I start to play small. I don't go after opportunities. I don't say what I want to say in a group setting at work or with friends, like whatever it is, right? So really becoming aware of how this limiting belief makes you act and feel. And then the next question is, oh, this is my favorite question. One of my favorite questions of all time, which is, who would you be without this belief? And go wild with just writing out, like, who would you be? For me, I used this exercise quite a lot when I was transitioning out of drinking alcohol to not drinking alcohol, and I'd have cravings. I'd really want some wine, and then I'd ask myself, because a craving is a belief that is accompanied with a physical feeling sometimes. So I'd be like, okay, I have the belief that I want a glass of wine. And then I asked myself, who would I be without this belief? And this is where the book Habit Freedom came from, because the answer to that was that without this belief of I want a glass of wine, I would be free. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so freeing. Like I could just let it go. And as soon as I landed, I started to feel like cosmically free because I could just let this belief go. I didn't have to hold on to it. The fifth and final question in Byron Katie's work is how to turn this belief around. So instead of saying, I'm not good enough, find ways where you are more than good enough. Like, I'm really good, I'm more than good enough with my friends. I'm good enough here, I'm good enough there, when I did this, when I did that. And start to accumulate evidence of the turned around belief. Here's the thing about beliefs: we don't choose our beliefs, we gather evidence for them, right? Because imagine if I said, okay, all of a sudden, Anita, you have to believe that the sky is green. You'd be like, cannot. I'm like, no, but your life depends on it. Like, you don't understand. Your life, your family's life, like, depends on you believing that right now. You have got to change your belief or else. No amount of threats would get you to change that belief. The only way you would shift that belief is if tomorrow morning you woke up and the sky was actually green, right? So the only way to then go ahead and then reframe from the limiting belief to the expansive new belief, the one that you're choosing, the new you, is to then go and gather evidence. So where am I good enough? Um, and this is where also, affirmations work when you do it the right way. And you can't say, like, if you're broke AF and have not a few pennies to your name, it's like, oh, I'm a millionaire, I'm this, I'm that, I'm wealthy, I'm a money magnet, if you're not. That doesn't work. If you find small things, like yesterday I found $10, and money does find me in mysterious ways. Oh, all of a sudden, I can start to believe that money finds me in mysterious ways because yesterday money did find me in mysterious ways. Can you see the difference between deluding yourself by just saying things that because your brain has a great bullshit detector. It's going to say, no, like if you say, I'm fit and healthy and wealthy, and your brain says, but no, you're not. Look at you. You can barely get off the couch. Right. But if you say, I'm doing my best to do 10 minutes of exercise a day, and that 10 minutes of exercise a day works up to 15 minutes and 20 minutes, and you build on that belief, all of a sudden you start to believe the new belief. So it's all about rewiring it, letting go, like becoming free of it by realizing that you have the ability to set it free, especially when you realize that you would be whoever you wanted to be without these limiting beliefs. And then the step after that is to gather the evidence for the new expansive beliefs.
Kind of want to go back to the first couple of questions that you were talking about. And you were saying, I'm not good enough. And then ask yourself, is that true? A lot of times, as we're growing up and we're learning as we grow up, in sports, we're in school, we're around different social circles because our social circles also change as we grow and get older. And a lot of times those people, places, or things, they try to shape us into who they think we are. One of the biggest things that people would tell me when I grew up, they told me, you talk too much, you're too loud, you laugh too much. And I always became really shy. I was really shy. I became more muted. I didn't want to really engage in conversations that much because if I was in ballet class and I was talking too much, I was doing 20 push-ups, no questions asked. I didn't want to do 20 push-ups on the spot. So it was just those people around me that were always trying to tell me who I should be when they don't know who I am. A lot of times we need to really break free from those limiting beliefs, exactly like you said. Those thoughts that are running through our head, say it out loud, but then ask yourself, is it true? Because it's probably not. And that's such a beautiful way for somebody who is having a hard time with their social circles. Let's say their social circles are not the most positive. And how can they learn to break free from negative social circles?
Oof, this is one of my favorite questions. And I dive into this a lot in the coaching and in the book and everything, because it's so powerful. The most important thing is if you want to upgrade your peer level, you need to become the type of person that your upgraded peer level wants to have around.
Yeah.
That is the harsh truth. That if you look around and everyone is partaking in just doing the same thing every weekend, not really growing, not learning, just complaining about the status quo, whether it's family or financial health or whatever, and they are smoking or drinking every weekend, and that's it, that's their life. And you realize, this is not for me anymore. I have a little voice that's tickling me, going like, you can do, you are destined for something else, for something greater. There will be a time of solitude. You will feel lonely in that growth where you are becoming that caterpillar. That caterpillar becomes goo before it becomes the butterfly. And being in that goo phase, and I have been in many of these goo phases where it feels very isolating, very lonely, and I have to learn now. It's easier to trust the process, that the new people, the new experiences, the new relationships will show up, but I have to become the type of person that these people want to also hang out with. So what are the habits that I need to embody? What are the things that I need to be doing and thinking? What are the activities? And it's a scary thing, especially if you're not used to losing friends or isolating yourself and like really focusing on yourself. We have that instinctual, like, the tribe is going to kick me out and I'm going to die. You're not going to die. That's like a very old pattern that we carry throughout in the society. But it can feel like life and death sometimes, and it can be very much a death portal. And some people you'll shed forever, and some people will come back, and that's fine. you know and just being able to go through that with grace and equanimity, and noticing that you're not in danger, you're good, and you are just up leveling and upgrading yourself, primarily, looking after your health, making sure that you're mentally healthy, physically healthy, really focusing on your business and career, and doing what you can to expand that, nurturing the relationships that you have with your family, uh, building bridges if you need to, and really becoming the person. It's like your soulmate friends, right? When people are looking for their soulmate person, it's a very similar exercise. Did this many times, and it works like a charm. I would write out, what do I want in a soulmate? I want someone who travels and who loves to learn and who loves new things and adventures, and we have a great social circle together, and all these things. I'm like, okay, great. So now I'm very happy with my vision and fantasy of what I want in a soulmate. And then the very next step is to ask, what does the soulmate want from me? And this is where I have to get brutally honest. Okay, wants me to be the healthiest and fittest that I can be. It wants me to have my own healthy social circle. It wants me to have a business that I'm really passionate about and I light up about, like all these things. And then if there's a gap between where I am and that person that I need to become, then I get to work to become that. Otherwise, I'm just living in fantasy la la land about attracting a soulmate, but it will never happen. And so I've used this exercise several times, and without fail, when I become that person that I envision for my soulmate, the soulmate shows up.
So many times that when we look at who we want in a partner, we can make a whole list. We can make a couple lists on what we want in a partner. But something that you said that really stood out to me was, what does my partner need from me? what can I do to make my partner want to be with me? Whether you
Yeah.
physically have a partner at the moment or you want to attract the type of person that you need, what does that person need from you? Do they need someone who works out every day? Do they need someone who cooks every day? Those are such important factors as well. And I've never heard somebody talk about that in the opposite way. And I really, really love that.
Yes, and to extend that with, again, up leveling your peer group, right? It's the same with its energy. It's just connecting with other souls who are on a similar path, understanding that when you are on your own habit freedom journey, meaning you're setting yourself free from from limitations, could be any limitations in any area of life, and then eventually, if you do this for long enough, you will connect with other people who are doing the same thing. They also value freedom. They also value, being the best version of themselves. But there is that hard part in between of working hard on yourself and sometimes not seeing results for weeks, maybe a couple months or months, and continuing the grind, and knowing that if you just keep showing up for yourself, that dream person or the dream people will show up for you as well.
That you were also talking about was the caterpillar and the butterfly. I love that example. I will talk about it every single time I can because it's so true. We know we have to go through a phase by ourselves. It's okay to have friends and it's okay to have the support of family members, but there comes a time and point where we need to do the inner work for ourselves and sometimes just not associate with people as much. It's okay to still hang out with your friends. It's okay to still go to family parties, but your personal time with yourself becomes your safe space. And that's when you really become who you want to be and you get that clarity because exactly like that caterpillar, he has so many layers and every day you peel off a layer, you become more vulnerable, you become more authentic, you earn more clarity on what you want and what does somebody else want from you, what does your family need from you to for them so you can be the best person for them as well. And I think that's so beautifully said. What are some things that have helped you on your personal journey of self growth and finding your purpose?
One of the things that helped me, when I really have gotten stuck, where I'm like, I'm doing all the right things, but I'm still frustrated, or, the patterns just aren't shifting. The two things that have helped is Vipassana retreats. That's 10 days of silence, meditation centers. You get Vipassana meditation centers all over the world. What I love about it, it is completely free to learn. The expensive part is finding 10 days to unplug and take away from your life. That's the biggest thing when I talk to people, and I could really tell that they're feeling a certain stuckness, and it would help them to sit in silence for 10 days, even though it's free of charge to learn and to go to these centers. A lot of them were like, but how would I ever find 10 days? And I'm like, well, if you can't invest 10 days in yourself, there's things to reevaluate. And yes, okay, sometimes there's responsibilities and kids and all. I'm not downplaying any of that. Of course, like, there's a time and place in your life for everything, and it's not going to be all the time that you can take those 10 days out. But it's such a hard reset. I call it a factory reset, because if you sit with yourself for those 10 days, it's hard to imagine that you won't discover something, that something won't shift. For me, when I did my Vipassana for the first time, like about 3 years ago, when I came out of that, I really understood how when I prioritized my relationship with myself and became the healthiest version of me, other people around me became healthy as well, like in their own sense, and the relationships got healthier. And so that philosophy of the world is a mirror and relationships are a mirror, that was like yeah, I understood that, and I got it from time to time. But it really landed when I came out of 10 days of silence and stillness and saw, wow, the world really is like that. The relationships are really reflections of me. And if I want anything to shift in a relationship, the only place to do that is with myself, and to start with within. So that's the one thing, that the one tool that I've used. The other tool that I've used are plant medicine ceremonies. And also, like, those are really hard. My favorite one that I've used, I haven't done any in the last year or so, but for about 2 years before that, I did 5 iboga ceremonies. And iboga is a plant medicine from Central Africa. Some people might know ibogaine, which is derived from iboga, and ibogaine, it gets used in addiction treatment centers. So that can be like really effective with hectic, advanced addictions with alcohol and heroin and things like that. Iboga is more of the natural ceremonial state. So that's been one of my favorite medicines. And before that, I did ayahuasca for a while. I've done like 12, 13 ceremonies of ayahuasca. So all of those things have helped. And I also like to, I don't think it's for everyone. I think when it calls you, it calls you. I find I often try to discourage people from doing that. I'm like, oh, it's so hard. I don't think you should do it. And then they want to do it more. but but yeah, I do feel that those things have, the plant medicine ceremonies and then the silent meditation, has transformed my life in many, many ways.
When it comes to habit building, for people to build better habits for themselves, to be a better version of themselves, what are some first three steps that you recommend for people to start building better habits?
But the first step is to identify, how is the habit limiting you, right? So what is the actual pain of the habit? So if we take eating sugar for a while, for instance, so what had happened after I gave up drinking, I started eating a lot of sugar and like just self-soothing with calorie dense foods, and that was a natural kind of addiction transfer. And then I realized, this is not, it's not helpful. This is not aligned to my values of health and longevity and feeling great in my body and looking great. So I really had to look at that habit. The first thing I did is like, okay, what is the pain associated with continuing this habit? If I continue this habit and I don't do anything to change it, how would it feel? And like really getting specific, like, oh, it would feel like waking up in the morning just feels like, oh, I don't want to look at myself in the mirror, or like putting on my favorite dress and it doesn't fit the way I want it to fit, like, and like just really getting graphic with myself, and letting myself feel that pain. Because a lot of people shift their habits when the pain gets high enough, because it doesn't get easier to shift your habit tomorrow. We have this illusion that tomorrow I'll start the diet, tomorrow I'll quit drinking, tomorrow I'll quit smoking or vaping or whatever it is. But tomorrow it gets harder, because today you're reinforcing that neuro pathway. So, in what world, you tell me, in what world will it be easier tomorrow? It's impossible. Like biologically, scientifically, it's not possible. Tomorrow, it will always get harder. And with enough tomorrows, it gets exponentially hard. The thing that happens though is that the pain of that habit gets higher and higher. So, say I can't fit in my clothes more and more and have to buy bigger and bigger clothes and feel more and more uncomfortable in my skin, and then when that pain gets so high that I have to do something to change it, then that's where the shift happens. That's why people have these rock bottoms. And I personally had a rock bottom with my alcohol story. That rock bottom, that shame, that pain, that disgust, that like nausea that I felt, like that's the pain that stopped me from going back to that habit, right? So I can hack the system, because we have these imaginations as human beings. So instead of having to experience the pain, I can imagine the pain and use that as a motivator to create the shift and to make that commitment once and for all. So that would be the first point, is getting really clear on the pain. The next step is really understanding that this is going to be an uncomfortable journey. There are going to be cravings. I'm going to want to eat a piece of cake or a croissant, and I'm going to have to say no to it. And really cultivating that relationship with discomfort. Going like, I'm going to feel uncomfortable. I'm going to feel the craving, but I choose the pain of feeling the craving and turning it down over the pain of not liking what I feel like and what I look like. There's pain on both sides. You're not going to avoid the pain. Pain is guaranteed. And most people are unconsciously just choosing the pain of continuing whatever habit they've been going along with, pre-programmed. And to actively choose the pain of switching the habit, choosing the pain of the craving. And I can also rewire that and say, like, the fact that I'm having the craving and I get to say no to it is empowering. It means I'm on the right track. It means that I'm choosing my health. It means that I'm choosing myself. It means I'm prioritizing how my future self feels, and I'm becoming my future self's best friend. And so really, so that when that craving shows up and that discomfort shows up, we're not surprised. We're like, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting to feel like this discomfort or this craving. No, you were expecting it, and you're still choosing the pain of saying no to the thing that gives you that short-term dopamine or that short-term gratification. So that's the second step. And then the third step, because just going from discomfort to discomfort and using willpower is very hard, and I eventually burnt out. So I'd white knuckle and, like, not eat sugar for days or weeks sometimes, and then I'd eat all the sugar and all the candy and everything. And so what I figured out is that for it to be a sustainable change, I needed to create a life where I get all those happy hormones, the dopamine, the excitement. I get all of that from my life. I get it from progress and from achieving things and from connecting with my friends and being in nature and doing active things. So I don't need the cheap dopamine that's in sugar or alcohol or smoking or doom scrolling or binge watching, all of those things that I used to do. And so only when it was a combination of the, yes, I understand it's going to be uncomfortable, but I also am infusing my life with so much joy and light and gratitude that there's just no space for the limiting habits anymore. That's where the profound shift happened.
Going back to what you initially said is we think by not doing it today, we think that doing it tomorrow is going to be easier. But it's really not. It's the same thing. It's either we do it right now or we delay it to tomorrow, which will likely lead to another delay. And that's a scary place to be because you're just waiting. You're hoping that the next day or the next week or the next month will just be easier to break those habits, but it really starts in that moment. I stopped drinking alcohol as well, and I went to a graduation party over the weekend, and I didn't drink anything. I already told myself I'm not going to drink. I'm just going to have juice or sparkling water, whatever they have available. And when I smelled the alcohol from the bar, I threw up immediately. It really does start with what we tell ourselves. If we tell ourselves it's going to be hard, it's going to be hard. If we tell ourselves it's going to be easy, it will be easy. And it really does start in that moment. And you really have to make that decision. Like, I'm not going to do this, and then the rest will fall into place. Or I will do this, and the rest will fall into place. So I really love how you took the time to explain those because it's such valuable insights. Before we go ahead and wrap things up, is there any last piece of advice that you would love to share with the audience, whether it's on limiting beliefs or the relationships that we have within ourselves?
Being on this journey of becoming who you once needed is such an honorable journey. Like your story, Aneta, is so beautiful because you are right now exactly the person that you needed a couple years ago, and I think that's why we vibe so well, we get on so well, because I can see that. And It's not for everyone, and not everyone, is going to want to go on that journey. But if you are on that journey, don't give up looking for or finding the others who are also becoming who they once needed. Because that like we talked about, there might be a point of loneliness and isolation, but eventually it is important to connect with other like-minded and like-hearted people. That community aspect of, like, I could never be where I am today without all of the people along the way. And so, like, it's such a, sometimes we do get into this trap of like being on our phones too much and not connecting in real life, or like loneliness is at an all-time high because we can just like distract ourselves from our loneliness by switching on a podcast or a book or watching a movie or doing this or doing that. But actually going out there and making those real life connections with other people is like the greatest hack to life. Just to reiterate what I'd already shared, the way I help my clients remember what I shared about doing the hard thing now is I ask them to like just put their hand up, and I'm like, it's just 5 words that you need to remember, and that's going to transform your habits today. Is do the hard thing now on your 5 fingers. 5 words, 5 fingers, just tap each finger, and then you do the hard thing now. So imagine you have to have a difficult conversation with a loved one. Do the hard thing now. Imagine you really want to quit vaping. Okay, 5 fingers, 5 words. Do the hard thing now. Because I promise you, there's no time in the future where it becomes easier. And so, those two things, the community and the people that you surround yourself with, because they're also going to raise your standards, right? Because they're not going to be able to tolerate people who don't keep themselves accountable, because they just don't want to hang out with people like that. So you have to become that version of yourself, that best version of yourself, to be in that tribe. And yeah, those two things really transformed my life, and those are the biggest things that help my clients.
It's been incredibly helpful, and I know this is going to help so many people. So before we finish, can you please tell us where can people support you?
So on Instagram, it's at Anna Shilina. I welcome DMs about habits and relationships. I love helping people. So that's at Anna Shilina. And for the book, you can find it at habitfreedom.com.
Thank you for joining us today, Anna.
Thank you for having me. This was absolutely delightful. I love being here.